Okay, good morning all. This is Tom Tresser of the Civic Lab and the TIF Illumination Project. And today we are doing a little overview of our TIF services for our colleagues at the Niles Coalition. So, first of all, the Civic Lab is a Black-led 501c3 nonprofit do tank dedicated to accelerating work in government accountability, social justice, and civic engagement. We seek to expand civic imagination for what is possible in our future. And our method is investigate, fabricate, educate, activate, liberate, and repeat. And we're online at civiclab.us. We are known for publishing this book, Chicago is Not Broke. You can learn more about it at wearenotbroke.org. But basically, it outlines $5 billion in sustainable revenue solutions for the city. And you might just say, America is not broke, because the ideas we talk about in this book are applicable in just about every jurisdiction. Since we started with our TIF Illumination project back in 2013, we've been called to over 185 public forums. And it's basically a packed house every time we visit. And the Civic Lab has no paid staff or office or marketing budget, so this is all people powered. We maintain a great website at tifreports.com, where there's a lot of stuff you can access, including brief videos that explain TIFs and a lot more. Our presentations that we put online have been seen over 260,000 times. As I said, we're called to visit all kinds of places and spaces, including the amazing organization, the Detroit People's Platform. We're talking to folks in Austin right now, Norman, Oklahoma, Paducah, Kentucky, and about 12 other cities. And what's underneath all this? What's all the hubbub about? Well, it's because we care about our property tax dollars. That's pretty simple. We want to track how they're used and abused. Now, according to Ibram Kendi, a racist policy is any measure that produces or sustains racial inequity between racial groups. That's a quote from How to Be an Anti-Racist. And we place TIFs squarely in that pathway. This map right here, showing our subway stops, maps inequities in life expectancy. So to sort of say racism is a pre-existing condition that covers our state and our nation. I live up on the top there in the yellow around Lincoln Park, and my colleague in the Civic Lab, Jonathan Peck, lives down in the Washington Park area. What this chart says is, if we both had children at the same time, given everything else not changing, my child would live about 12 years longer than his. And we ground all of our civic research and work in this reality. All right, well, let's talk a little bit about TIFs overall. Most of our work has been done in Chicago, but we've done TIF illuminations for Woodstock, Cincinnati, Olympia Fields, Oak Park, and many other places. But just to give you an example of what we can tell you is, here are the TIFs of Chicago from 2020. You can see there's 136 of these bad boys, but in the suburbs, another 311. And you can see how they sort of dot the landscape like little pockmarks, and they touch. You can see a lot in the Chicago region. They touch because TIF money can move from one TIF to another. And like the Frankenstein monster, you know, who was built supposedly to serve mankind, you know, the scientist said, "Don't worry about it. I got him under control." And then, of course, he bursts his chains, breaks the scientist's neck, and sets the village on fire. That's kind of how TIFs are going, we feel. So in Chicago, in 2020, there was 136 active TIFs. They removed $820 million in property taxes, and they spent $415 million. And since TIFs came to Chicago in 1986, they stole $10 billion in property taxes. That's an awful lot of our public money to go missing. And our political analysis is that this is a reason for this. And you can see Mayor Daley, Richard M. Daley, was the king of TIFs, and they increased exponentially under his administration. And the numbers might have gone up and down since his day, but the revenue extracted by TIFs continue to skyrocket. Now, one of the things that the TIF Illumination Project does every year is sort of sum up all the TIFs of Chicago and Cook County. And one of the things that we release is a number that says, well, how much money is sitting in the TIF accounts at the end of the year? We think this is an incredibly important thing to know for any activists working on any kind of justice issue in their city or in their municipality. How much money are we talking about? In the case of Chicago, at the end of 2020, there was $1.9 billion in TIF funds, which again is property tax sitting in accounts, waiting for the mayor to distribute them. And how is it in your city? The same question we would want to know. Statewide, you can see since TIFs started tracking here back in 1980, it's a huge, huge number. So there's about 1,400 TIFs across 580 municipalities, and they extracted a total of $1.8 billion in 2019. And since TIFs came to Illinois, it's $24 billion. So, there's been a lot of discussion about the state's finances. And without a discussion of TIFs in that discussion, I don't think you really can come to a good conclusion about, is Illinois broke or not? Do we have to mess with state retirees, pensions, et cetera, et cetera? So again, it's kind of a hidden part of our public finances. Well, what about the whole country? Sadly, there is no one place to go to get a big picture for all the TIFs in America, but we estimate that 40,000 TIFs across the country in 49 states are sucking up $40 billion every year. And if you care about public stuff, particularly public education, this should be very alarming to you, because property taxes are one of the primary sources of funding public education, sadly, in America. And about 50% or 50 cents of every property tax dollar is supposed to go to the local public schools. And that's how it is here in Chicago. It's about 56 cents. But if $40 billion of property tax goes missing across the country, that means America's public schools are getting ripped off of $20 billion each and every year. Yeah, and that makes him very sad. When we do a TIF Illumination, we tell you a couple of things. We describe how TIFs work. So we don't move on until everybody's comfy with how what is a TIF and how does it work, and what is the increment. It's an important piece of public knowledge. We talk about the extent of TIFs in Illinois and the description and history of TIFs in your city or municipality, including how much money they've extracted since they were created, how much money they've spent, and if we can, tell you about the projects that the TIFs have funded. Sometimes that's easily discerned, and sometimes it's a little hidden. We also discuss the policy issues, of which there are many, and those policy issues are all organizing hooks that can drive civic anger and civic engagement towards a better solution. We tell you about other TIF fights across the United States. And as I say, we call out TIFs as racist. So we place this work in kind of a larger context, if you will, of Black Lives Matters, who plans what for who, economic justice, the 1%, 99%, those narratives are all connected to the TIF question. And then we talk about next steps. What are you up for? What does this reveal to you? What do you want to do about it? Where are your people at? And what other allies or partners would be interested in sharing this knowledge in order to organize? Here are just two examples of some of the things we've done recently. So here's a TIF forum that we did in Evanston in late last year. And you can just go to that link and click on that. And that's about an hour and a half or so of the process, and you would see how it unfolds. And this one was done for a coalition of organizers and an elected official in Berwyn called the TIFs of Berwyn, and that was done in March of last year. Now we get inquiries all the time, including inquiries from your own group, but this is the one that just came in as an email that's couple of weeks old from Sarah. And she said, I found your website through a Google search. We're hoping you can help. We're facing a $300 million TIF in Maines County, Oklahoma. We think it's for Panasonic. Our governor is promising to give the same company at least $1.2 billion in subsidies at the state level. We need help fighting this. Yeah, break glass, call the TIF Illumination Project. So that's a little bit about us. And we have David Sutherland, an organizer for the Niles Coalition, on the line. So I will stop sharing my screen. And if there's any questions, fire away.
Thank you so much, Tom. So you talked about this TIF Illumination. Is this, so am I describing it right? It's called a TIF Illumination.
Yeah.
Public meeting, or
yeah, it's
like
a public forum.
Public forum. And you've been doing this during the pandemic, I'm assuming, and you've been doing them like virtually. Is that like the format?
Oh yeah, we've done many.
So so many online, and I'm sure you have across, it's like the whole spectrum, right? You've probably done public meetings. I see pictures. You're doing like public meetings in person, and you've doing them online.
We have.
And I see examples are like in Evanston, Berwyn. Are these typically organizations that are like pre-existing, or are they like a loose coalition of community members that come together?
We've had both.
Yeah.
We've had groups that have been very well organized with boards of directors, and they had their own space and staff and whatnot. And in some cases, people have been flyering by the L lines, and they have their own email lists. And in some cases, it was a coalition of individuals that came together up in the 49th Ward. There were activists who were well known to each other, but there wasn't an organization. They just sort of combined their resources. In the 19th Ward, it was a group of teachers who never worked together before. So we had to coach them about how to make flyers and so forth. So it's all stripes. We work with all our partners to brainstorm about, well, who might be also interested, who we know, and that you may know or you may not know. So in the case of Niles, it might be, like who's around you. We would look at our database just to see if we have anybody from the zip codes near you, just because we've done so much work. You know what I mean?
Gotcha.
And we brainstorm as well for other allies that would be, we think, should be at your table to make the meeting successful, reach as many as possible.
Yeah. No, that's so cool, because you do have experience, and so much experience in this. I would imagine, like, yeah, you'd be able to connect some dots that we wouldn't be able to. Like, you have a vision, a perspective that we don't, and that's really neat. We met a few months ago, and you gave us some great advice about organization, because we're new. We're less than a year old. Some of that advice was to get a bank account and get donations, right? And so we haven't done that yet. We plan to, I think. We're still talking about it. So we have no funds. We have a couple $100 sitting in somebody's wallet that we collected for some lawn signs. We do not have any money. So we're trying to figure out how to fund this. And I think that was one of the biggest fears, was just like, oh, we cannot afford this. But I think this sounds like a super important work. And I think it's connected to the struggle, like you said.
Yeah.
In Niles, it's a very white community, right? So we're trying to and also a lot of our organizers are white ourselves. So we're trying to figure out how do we join that struggle for racial justice in our community,
Sure.
because it's there, right? And so we just have to find it
Well,
and
that's part of the service we offer. We know a lot of people in those spaces and places, and we can help you noodle that out. But yeah, you should get a bank account, and you should make no bones about it on your website and your emails. And again, I've done many campaigns that weren't, nonprofits, right? So if I donate to you, it's clear I can't deduct it, but it's okay. People do that all the time for causes and candidates. And you would just say that on your website, the Niles Coalition is not a nonprofit. Your contributions are not deductible, but they're sorely needed anyway. And that's fair. And then people will be happy to donate to you.
yeah.
Also, if you're in coalition with some other groups, like maybe the PTA or the League of Women Voters, those two groups particularly don't like snarky things that are hidden, away from the public eye. They have a long record of doing good work for the community, and the League of Women Voters especially doesn't like secrets in government, people moving money around without account. And there are a few other, I would say, obvious suspects, usual suspects that you might work with.
Okay, that's fair enough. And then, so part of this is local research, right? So this service of the TIF Illumination includes like you digging into Niles information about how TIFs are being used here. I know that you originally contacted us saying like your taxes are going up 88%, and there's a big Gulf Mill project that the mayor has been dropping, like word TIF, and so some red flags there, obviously.
Yeah.
And we were just like, we should look into that. And then you reached out, so it was really great that you connected that for us. And we also have interest in affordable housing, and I don't know how that's connected with the TIFs, but I know that luxury housing was mentioned in the Gulf Mill project up here in Niles, but nothing about affordable housing.
Yeah.
So
the Illumination will tell you how many TIFs are present in Niles, and I'll just tell you right now, you have 6 active TIFs, and I think there are 4 expired ones. So part of the research is to say, well, whatever the active TIF number is, how long have they been around, and how much money have they cumulatively, to this day, from the time they were started, how much have they pulled off the table, and what do we know about why? Sometimes it's plain, this TIF was created to fund that project, that mall, that whatever, whatever it is. Sometimes it's a little cloudy. Sometimes there's a project on the table, like you're just saying, there's something in the works in which the word TIF has been floated. And so sometimes there are documents that one can get that make that clear. And then there's the expired TIFs. So those are the ones that are hardest to track down, but we do that because that is still part of the record. So you can't really say what TIFs have done to your community in total unless you include the ones that aren't even around anymore, because they were around for, in some cases, maybe for decades. So we pull all that together in a way that is unique, so everyone can sort of have it in one handout, if you will, that shows the map of the city and the headlines. Okay. Then if there's any other startling things that we find, like have the developers of TIF or the people who receive the TIF money, have they made any campaign contributions to your elected officials? We think that's important to know, because this is not a program that lives in some vacuum, absent politics, absent corruption. It's a very corrupt program. And when you find that a developer who received buckets of money, of your money, public money, but also gave money to the local mayor or alderperson or state representative, and you just go, well, it's a coincidence. No, it isn't. So on that count alone, you could probably throw most of the TIFs of America into the trash. But in any case, if that's the case, we will reveal that as well in our meeting.
Gotcha.
And then to your point, the policy issues, well, if the city, if your body politic wants and needs more public stuff, whatever it is, parks, health, housing, then you have to make that demand on the city budget. You know, the city budget overall will reflect that.
Mhm.
And if it isn't, then it's not meeting your needs. And if part of the city budget is being used to fund luxury housing that will help some people, but not many, that is a policy disconnect. And
Gotcha.
that's part of what we're trying to show, that public budgets are moral documents,
Mhm.
and that they should reflect the aspirations and hopes and needs of the public, the people who are living there and voting and paying these taxes.
Yeah.
And what part of what we say in our presentation is that TIFs pervert the planning process because it's not in public, it's secret. And if someone's got clout and got the right lawyers and knows the right guys and can get the forms filled out, it's legal, but we think it's immoral. And so you could have 1,000 people basically saying, we need this, we need that, especially in a pandemic. We need more public health. We need more whatever, rent assistance,
Mhm.
Whatever it might be. But if this TIF thing continues along, that guy's going to get his money for his luxury housing before you get your PPEs
Mhm.
and that extra nurse you needed for the poorer part of your community where
Yeah.
healthcare is not as what it should be.
Yeah, gotcha. You mentioned a couple names already, but what kind of organizations could we approach and partner with to try to share the cost of an event such as this, or a
Well,
project like this?
I can't say as I know everything that's going on in your community, all the different groups, but any PTA, so any school has a PTA, they should all be approached. The school board should be approached. If they are not going to be part of this, they should be on the record as to why not.
Mm.
And the school board, if they're all elected, again, in Chicago, it's bizarre. Our school board is not elected, so they're never part of this work. They should be. The CFO and the superintendent of your school boards should be partners. Now, they probably will treat this like it's radioactive because it puts them in opposition or in conflict with their mayor. So the superintendent tries to work cooperatively, obviously, with all the mayors in their districts, in their zone. And there's a million things going on, obviously, to run a school, you know, funding, highways, healthcare, you know, unions, a million things. Like the head of a school is like a little mayor in themselves, right? And it's a bone of contention across the country between school districts and their mayors. We see in some places they work together and a TIF is created and they make some kind of agreement to send some money back channels to try to make good on the money that's lost. It's not as much as if there was no TIF, but it's more money than if there was no agreement. So we see those political realities play out, but in some places and in many places, that agreement goes south and the school board ends up suing the mayor.
Mm.
And that's a terrible situation because the taxpayers are on both sides of the lawsuit.
Oh,
They're
gotcha.
suing and defending, if you follow me.
Yeah, right.
Paying the lawyers for both sides, and that's crazy. And that actually happened in Oak Park about 12 years ago, and they spent $600,000 in legal fees, where
Wow.
the school board, I think it was District 200, sued the township of Oak Park. Well, you certainly don't want to be in that situation. But as a taxpayer or as a parent or as a member of the community, you have a right to ask the school board to take a position on this. And they may just duck it. So that's one group. If your library has a Friends of the Library, they should be approached because TIF money is also taken away from libraries. Not as much as the money is taken away from schools, but it is taken away from them.
Okay.
And also any public sector unions that you know of, the teachers union and any other public sector union that is present in your county or in your area. This again is money that's withdrawn from the public sector.
Mm.
And
Okay.
they should be aware and take a position as well. If you have any college nearby, you know, that's an approach to the government department, political science department, urban studies department, anybody who's doing social justice work. If there's a social works track, all those professors and all their students should be part of this, because this is part of the fabric of funding the public works in your community.
Gotcha.
And we think students who are in those spaces, who are either going to go into the public sector, like to serve, like be a social worker, or to be an urban planner, or someone who's interested in just politics in general,
Mm-hmm.
this stuff is happening right there. So I mean, if there's a community college or that's in your area,
Mm-hmm.
this is a case study of real, gritty politics.
Gotcha.
That isn't really looked at. So so if I was a professor of urban studies, I would love to send my kids to your thing and just sort of observe,
Mm-hmm.
or maybe even be interns, maybe to help.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
a few off the top of my head.
that's a lot. That's a lot of connections we need to make, I think, in Niles. And so this would be a good excuse to do that. But I thank you for those kind of ideas. Really quick, I don't want to keep you too long. But what are some outstanding examples that you could think of, maybe recently or in your history, long history of fighting this fight, of community groups have come together and then had found success in this struggle?
Well, sadly, we don't really have too many stories of TIFs being turned off. I think all the work we've done, because our capacity is so limited, has really been in the sort of setting the water to boil.
Yeah. Gotcha.
Because we just simply don't have staff to do anything after. So after we visit with you, I don't even have anybody who can come back to you. I mean, it would be just me calling you 6 months later to say, how's it going? So it's not like we can staff you up or do anything.
Right.
Or film a movie about it, or do anything to sort of lift the issue. We couldn't even take out an ad in the penny saver. To say, hey, come to the Niles Community Church on July 3rd for a speaker meeting. We had zero resources for that. So sadly, what we can say is people have run for office as a result of coming into this work, and on their own, they go out and talk about TIFs. We've seen people search out new candidates. They get so disgusted with their local officials, they actually formed search committees.
Okay.
We've seen people create their own maps and continue doing this work, going on, sort of self-educating and continuing the work. Like, okay, so Tom helped us understand everything up to 2020, but now it's 2021, so we'll take it from here.
Yeah.
We'll continue this illumination process. And I think overall, we are helping to nullify this notion that local groups, local communities, or local governments, they're broke. Mm-hmm. Because every time we do an illumination, we're revealing this sort of hidden money, and they're kind of not being straight with us. And it calls into question a lot of things that the cities or the municipalities are claiming to be true. So if you could say this, we're sort of building the civic muscles that we're not sure where it's going to go. The group that we're working with in Detroit used it in all the mayoral and city council elections in November of 2021. So you couldn't run for anything in the city of Detroit without having to answer the questions. What do you think about TIFs? What's going on with them in Detroit? Will you reform them? They put their feet to the fire, and that served those people notice, even if they were not elected. I better get smart on this.
Yeah.
So they galvanized the entire electorate of Detroit, and we think that's a good thing.
Yeah, I love that you said civic muscle. I love that idea as an organizer. That's what really excites me about this more than TIFs, unfortunately. But TIFs are super important. I know that. But getting our community engaged is really important for us. And there's so many opportunities for us to get involved. But this is something I think that could really motivate the community. So,
well, remember, this country was founded when people were messing with our taxes. So it's that issue. I mean, I know they shroud it with acronyms and they really make it hard to get the data. That's what that's why we call it illumination. But at the bottom line, it's your property tax. It's the basic DNA of government. And even if you're a renter, it's still, you're in the game, because obviously you're paying your money to the owner of the property, and he or she is paying the property tax. So still your money. Yeah. So every single person in the community, even if they don't live in a TIF district, they're still in this game. And so if anyone cares about public education, public housing, public health, the parks, the libraries. That's your constituency, which is like everybody. So,
Right.
yeah, and so it's a good exercise for you and your allies to how do you talk about this stuff. It's not boring. It's completely not boring. I mean, as I say, 14,000 people have come to our workshops of every stripe of life, every level of education, whatever you want to think about people's station in life. This is not above anybody's pay grade.
Yeah.
Everyone gets it when we're done with it.
Gotcha.
And the same will be true for your people.
I'm sure it will be. All right, Tom, that was really awesome. Very informative. You know, I know we had a lot of questions about this. Your presentation, I think, filled in a lot of those gaps. And I really appreciate your help and your time today. I think that's pretty good on our end.
All right.
And I'll be happy to share this video.
All right, David. All right, this is Tom Tresser at the Civic Lab and the TIF Illumination Project, signing off, wishing everybody out there to stay safe, sane, and strong. Be well.